What's going on, guys? Figured I'd go ahead and fire off a shop update for you, maybe a day or so earlier than normal, and go ahead and get that checked off my weekly to-do list here. And speaking of that, I know last week I mentioned about checking off a box and getting a little serotonin rush or a little chemical rush of satisfaction. I believe I misspoke on that. Not that anybody cares, but the chemical I meant to refer to, I believe, is actually dopamine. Both serotonin and dopamine are both chemicals in the body that somehow regulate or have to do with mood and pleasure and things like that. But I think dopamine is the one that your brain releases, like, for instance, when you accomplish a task or, receive a little bit of satisfaction or, a little boost of happiness or whatever. I think that's what I was going for. I may very well still be wrong, but I figured I'd throw that out there. Maybe somebody can correct or verify in the comments below. But at any rate, let's go ahead and jump into what I've been working on this week. First things first, I went ahead and threw together this little poor man's anvil stand, or what I would call the Hillbilly Anvil. And it's just a little piece of railroad track I've had laying around for years now. I actually found this and one other piece about the same length, but a little taller, slightly different profile. Found them both underneath one of my tool sheds, actually, and I'm not entirely sure what they were doing there. I can only assume maybe when the guy framed up the sheds, he stuck them down there as kind of a makeshift pier. Just an FYI, not a great idea. They were sunk down into the mud. They weren't even touching the framing anymore. And maybe they just got set beside the shed and fell underneath the shed as the ground got wet or whatever. I don't know, but if you're going to build a shed and you want it to last and never change level or sink into the ground, take the time and dig some actual concrete piers, below the frost line, 8 or 10 or 12 inches, depending on the size of the shed, and, frame out from there. Do it the right way. This guy, he did not do it the right way. Both of my sheds are actually in pretty poor condition right now. I'm just waiting for the day they fall in, and then maybe I'll build a pole barn or something else in their place. But all that to say, I had two pieces of railroad track, and I've used them off and on in the shop for years for different projects, whether it was peening a rivet or a pin on something, straightening out a bent piece of whatever. They haven't been entirely useless. But at the end of the day, I really didn't want to set them up for any kind of a knife-making anvil because they're really not great anvils. I know a lot of guys get started with railroad track. I guess it's better than nothing, but they're not that heavy. The rebound's kind of odd on them. Just about any kind of animal would probably be better than this. But then again, at the end of the day, I got to thinking, I've got it. I use it for other things. I might as well set it up to where it's at least halfway usable, for something. So I made this little stand, and you guys might be wondering why I configured it this way. I'm kind of wondering that myself. To be honest, I was trying to use, I had two scrap like 8-foot or so pieces of 2x8 lumber. They were in pretty poor shape, but I cut them up, a certain way to try to use them, and I ended up having to scrap a couple more of the pieces than I thought due to splits or rotting. And what I had left wasn't exactly enough to configure it like I had originally planned. So ultimately, I still had to go to the hardware and get another 2x8, and this is kind of what I came up with using what I had already cut versus, the new piece. And, right now it's set up right at knuckle height if I'm standing next to it and making a fist. It could probably even be a little bit higher. I'm not sure. I'm going to use it like that and see what I think. But again, at the end of the day, for years I've always thought that I'd just go ahead and buy an actual anvil. And the one I want, I'd love to find an old Peter Wright that's maybe 200 to even 250 pounds. I've pretty much resolved myself to the fact that may never happen, or if it does, I'm going to be paying at least $1,500 to a couple grand for it. for one that's in halfway clean and usable shape. And because of that, I've pretty much decided, right now, if I had $1,500 or $2,000 to spend, it's probably not going to be on an anvil. There's a lot of other tools and things I want to do. I've got some plans and some ideas that could much more use that money right now. And, at the end of the day, I'll get one eventually, but it's probably not going to be for at least another couple of years. And that's fine. But at the same time, I'd still kind of like to play around with, beating on some hot steel. So I figured why not just put together what I've got now and try to use it. Is it going to be ideal? No. Am I going to work myself to death trying to use it? Probably. But again, it's better than nothing. And I figured, it may be 2, 3, even 5 years before I get a real anvil. I can either have zero experience beating on hot steel, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, or I can have 2, 3, 4, or 5 years of experience, learning on what I do have, and then buy something better to level up my game. And, that's what I've decided on. Use what you got. Don't wait for the perfect day or the perfect scenario. I heard a saying this week that went something like, doubt has killed more dreams than failure ever has. So has waiting. So has procrastination. And not that I want to blow this up into something spiritual or mystical, some big lifelong dream that I'm trying to realize. Maybe it is in one sense, but at the same time, it's also just something that I want to do, something I want to try. I see dozens of makers on Instagram. I listen to all these podcasts about these bladesmiths. I watch all these YouTubes of guys beating on metal and, forming these things out from, raw stock. And not that it's better, than the way that I make knives now. Stock removal is just a different way, to kind of come up with the same thing. But there is also kind of a different aspect of bladesmithing and forging that I've kind of yet to try or to experience. So, I figure I can use what I have. Maybe it'll fail miserably. Maybe I'll hate it. But I had all this stuff lying around, except for the new piece of lumber there. But I've got the stuff lying around. I might as well put it to use and see what I think. And if it fails, then, I'll move that over to the corner of the shop. I'll use it for other things like, I have already beaten out pins or, straightening whatever. I could still use it, just maybe not for knives. I don't know. Only one way to find out, and that's to try. So I've got that, and then actually over there under the bench, I've got a forge I built years ago. It would probably benefit for some ICT 100 coating or some other kind of refractory lining. It's got KO wool and refractory cement in it now. It does heat up, it does get hot, but it's not very efficient. I may buy some ITC 100 like I used in the kiln. I was very happy with how that worked out. Another $45 or $50 jar of the stuff would be more than enough for that size forge that I built. And then I've also got, there's the burner right there. It's a forced air burner, single burner forge. It should be enough to at least heat up a little piece of raw stock and, at least be on it into some kind of shape. And maybe I'll just make a pot hanger or a decorative hook or a leaf or who knows what. It doesn't have to be a knife. Maybe I'll just play with some scrap mild steel I've got lying around. But I've also got a huge piece of 2-inch by probably 5-foot long W1, or I assume it's W1. It was some shaft off an old dryer. I might beat that out and see what it does, see if I can harden it or do whatever. But, just one of those things, as if I don't have 100 other projects going on, just one of the things I'd like to try one of these days. So that's one of this week's projects. Another thing I went ahead and did this week, I got some more vacuum hose and made up a 20-foot shop vac hose that I can tie into my cyclonic system that I use for dust collection on my router. Now I can plug this in and pretty much go anywhere in the shop to sweep the floor. I'm not sure if the length will be much of a problem yet. I don't think it will be. For what I'm normally trying to vacuum up is pretty lightweight. It might not pick up like screws or real heavy pieces, but it should be good for like a little metal dust and sawdust and stuff. So that's another little thing I made up this week, and I may still even shorten it up. And then over here, what do we got going on? Well, for one, I finally sold the Shopsmith. I don't think I mentioned that last week because I think it sold a day after the last update. And what an ordeal that turned out to be. I don't know if you guys have ever sold anything on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. If you have the same experience as I do, but it seems like it never fails. I get, like a dozen or more people asking, oh, is this still available? And, that I understand, that I have no problem with. Not everybody, I realize, will open or close an item, once it's been sold. And, maybe somebody's already looking at it. That's fine. I'm all for people asking if it's still available. But after I answer you, I would love to hear an additional response. Do you want to come see it? Do you want to know something else about it? 9 times out of 10, they're asking already exactly what I've got written in the ad, like, oh, what comes with it? Well, I already put that in the ad, but here it is again. And then they'll ask some other nonsense question. And then this one guy, he was like giving me his whole life story about everything he had to spend money on that week, and he wasn't sure if he could afford it. So then I asked the guy, which I thought was funny, I said, would it help if I knocked $50 off? Because I'm already selling this thing at a very reasonable price for what you're getting versus what you'll find one anywhere else, on eBay or Craigslist or wherever. Nobody's going to be finding one cheaper than I sold this thing. But I asked him, if I knock $50 off, would that help you to make a decision to come see it or not? Well, then the guy started acting like he was offended, that I thought maybe he wasn't good for it. He said, oh, no, I pay people what I owe, and the price isn't the problem. Well, obviously it is if you're telling me that you don't know if you have enough money for it, or he's trying to offer me trades, which I appreciate. I said, okay, I'm not really looking for anything, but what do you have? Maybe he's got something that I didn't realize I wanted or needed. Well, he's got like angle grinders and table saws, which I've got those coming out of my ears around here. And then the other thing was, he said, well, I do roofing and, auto mechanics. I was like, well, I do all that myself, but you're not trying to tell me you're going to trade me a roof for a Shopsmith, are you? I mean, I was only asking like $250 for this. Even if I bought all the materials, he's going to come put a roof on for the price of a Shopsmith. I mean, the guy, like, I could tell he wanted it, but the way he was going about it, it was just kind of funny. Ultimately, I ended up selling it to somebody else, and, the guy will probably message me a week from now asking me if I've still got it, even though I've already closed the ad. But all that to say, I finally sold it, opened up some space, put a little money in my pocket, and now, like I said in another update, as soon as a space opens up, you almost always fill it with something else. So I've got this piece of crap, what I call my Frankenmower, pulled in, and the goal here is to get everything put back together on this and running so that I can sell this on Facebook Marketplace and undoubtedly get, 100 people asking if it's still available, never hearing from them again. And then I get somebody else that'll ask me, like, how many hours are on the motor. Like this thing obviously has an hour meter on it. Or they'll ask me, like, yeah, how many blades of grass did it cut? So I'm not really looking forward to that, but, I'm going to put it up for a reasonable price. And then actually behind the door out there in the driveway, I've actually got yet another mower that I'm going to fix up and sell. and it's the second mower I owned while I've had this property. Right now it's actually running. It wasn't running. I got it running again. The problem now, though, is that the hydraulic fluid or the hydrostatic transmission fluid ran out of one side of it because I had the neutral plungers pushed in for too long, I guess. So it's not moving front or back. I bought some fluid for it. Hopefully it's just a matter of topping that off and I can put that up for sale. And then hopefully tomorrow or by this weekend I can finish this. I had to weld up a broken shaft here. I've got to find the chain that I believe is hanging around here somewhere or go buy another one. The roller chain for the drive. Bought a couple of pulleys for it. I got to replace the battery cables and wire a couple things up on it. And it might need a new key switch. I may actually just wire in a temporary switch, do like a push button start. However way I got to rig it together. I mean, obviously it's an amalgamation of all kinds of different parts and pieces. I got to make a new muffler pipe. Like I said, I call this the Franken mower. It's 2 or 3 different brands of mowers all represented here. So gonna get it running, gonna get it mowing, and then I'm gonna sell it for probably way less than I should. But between the two, I'm hoping to get enough cash to put towards a CNC plasma machine build. And I'm not sure if I've mentioned that on the channel yet. But that's likely going to be one of my next big projects. It's probably going to cost about $2,500 to $3,000, including the, well, give or take a decent plasma machine. The table build itself, the motors, the controls, the steel, the water table, building all that from scratch, the way I want to do it. It'll likely be a 5x5 table, so just a little bit smaller than this. This is a 4x4 table, but it's actually about 6x6, or actually maybe it is about 5x5, or 5x6, I think this table is. So the CNC plasma will actually be just a little bit smaller than this, and I may even make it smaller than that before it's all said and done. But it'll probably be about the same size, at which point I will have 0 room left in this garage. But it's necessary for some future ideas and projects I have down the line. And worst case, I'll build it, I'll use it, and then I'll sell it and, fund another project. But it's all part of some big scheme I've got going, so it all starts with these. Make some money selling these, getting those out of my hair, and then hopefully I can start that plasma table build pretty soon. And I'm going to try my very best to document that a little bit more as well. So that should be something for you guys to look forward to. So I think that's about all I wanted to cover this week. I may do a little bit of video on these mowers. They're fun. Just a quick aside, we'll cut this off at about 20 minutes, but I have had the absolute worst luck with mowers, and I don't know what it is. I mean, I know I've got a little bit of incline. My property's got some hills on it. It's not exactly ideal for anything less than a commercial grade mower, and even commercial grade mowers, it's hard on. So, I've burned up the transaxle on a John Deere, which was really more for like an acre or less. I'm mowing almost 2 acres, again, on an incline. This thing I've rebuilt so many times. This one outside in the driveway I've rebuilt. I just bought a used one off of my boss for a few $100. I've already done work to it. Seems like every week something happens to these mowers that I've got to deal with. My best idea would probably be to sell all of them and just buy a new decent one. But, like I said, I've got other plans, other ideas. So again, let's cut this off at 20 minutes. Anybody that made it this far, I appreciate it, guys. Have a great week, and I'll see you on the next one.